About 2 years ago, I was thrifting with my sons, and my middle son held up one of those nondescript wicker cornucopias and asked me what it was. I was looking at something else at the time. I did not give him a great answer, but this woman standing beside us took deep offense to that, went into full on teacher mode, and gave us a lecture about the importance of cornucopias and their symbolism as a horn of plenty. I don't know what I had going on that day, but I was not in the mood to be lectured about my parenting, let alone about cornucopias, of all the things that don't require a detailed answer. But I do owe this lady a thank you because that has turned into an ongoing game at the thrift shops. For 2 years, my son has been picking up cornucopias and asking me what they are. But he is really good about coming up, holding it just out of my line of sight, and getting my attention so that I think he has a real actual question. And when I turn to look prepared with some explanation of what wonderful vintage thing he has found, nope, it's a cornucopia. And there are so many of them. We decided to see how many we could find on one thrifting trip. And straight in the door of the first thrift shop, there was one. This is not bad as far as decorative cornucopias go. And I don't know if this basket next to it, three of us could not decide whether this thing is a cornucopia or not. So I'm counting it as not. Let me know, is that thing a cornucopia? And of course, we weren't just looking for Thanksgiving symbolism. We did go look at the bric-a-brac because that's the fun part of thrifting after you look at the crafts and the vintage Nancy Drew books. I don't film everything I look at, as I'm sure you know. Here is the trivet part of one of those decorative metal trivets we're framing our cross stitch in. Wish I could have found the metal without the ceramic, but no luck. I need some new whisks, but I convinced myself that I can find a cheaper one at an estate sale. How silly is that to pass by the one that is looking me in the face because I will find a better one cheaper at some point months from now? The need for a whisk isn't critical, and I like those Barnes salt and pepper shakers. Those are kind of cute. That lid does not belong on that dish. I don't know why that annoys me. Love this little amber cups and saucers. The sparkly glass stuff lately catches my eye. And one of these days I'm going to find a buy the bag estate sale, and I'm going to buy a bunch of this clear and tinted stuff and make flowers for the yard. And my husband is going to hate it, but he also didn't notice that we'd had a plastic sewing machine hanging in the front yard for 6 months now. It is a birdhouse. It was manufactured to be a birdhouse. I am not doing anything weird, although I really doubt that birds like to hang out in plastic sewing machines. But it's cute. What do you think of all of the yard art that they're making out of old glassware? It's kitschy and kind of tacky, but in my 100-year-old farmhouse out in the country, I can do it without aggravating anyone except for potentially my husband, and there are places I can put it where it would not antagonize him. Either that or I could plant ferns, because he really doesn't care for those either. This is the first metal detector I've ever found in the thrift shop, although who knows, I may have walked past a dozen of them without even noticing. I was very tempted by this $3 box of floor tiles. They might work to replace the super ugly linoleum in our bathroom, but they aren't the peel and stick kind, and I convinced myself that it'd require some specialized glue or knowledge and become a much more expensive than $3 project, so I did walk away from those. Where I headed to was the wicker aisle to see if we could find more cornucopias. I honestly did not see any. Now that I watch this again, I am seeing all kinds of possibilities for framing finished cross stitch. I saw a couple of trays there that would work. And until I have a specific project in hand, I am not going to just randomly buy things. This thing intrigued me, and I was just picking it up, trying to figure out what on earth it was, and got the hey mom, there's a cornucopia. So that brings it up to 2 for this store, 3 if we want to count that weird random basket that may or may not be a cornucopia. And back to this thing. What do you think this is? My best guess, because those indentations are shallow, is that it was a candle holder. So they took a hunk of wood and they fastened one of those neat pieces of fungus to it, but they used the ugliest screws in the absolute most obvious way. I hope they liked it. Not something I needed to bring home with me. This little box intrigued me, and I'm trying to decide, is that a party scene on the front? Because to me, that looks more like a hula skirt than a ball gown. Maybe I'm just weird. I always liked the little family sculptures, but these were weird. I picked up the bunny to look at the Norman Rockwell kind of scene behind it, and I wasn't expecting its clothes to be soft, which got the weirdest reaction out of me. I don't know why it made me shudder, but it did. I don't usually shudder when I pick up thrift store stuff unless it's unexpectedly sticky or dusty. I love these little resin houses, and someday I am going to bring home a whole batch of them, but $4 each is enough to keep me away. Okay, somebody tell me, are these characters I should recognize? I am trying to figure out. It's ugly, and there is something going on in this scene that I cannot quite decipher. So if you look at the little boy, he has got a slingshot in his back pocket. He has got scissors on his desktop, and I almost want to think there is something in his hands because the teacher looks angry. And that little girl in the yellow dress, she's reacting to something which makes me think he did something to the little girl in the green dress. And that's a paddle hanging beside the teacher's desk. This whole thing is weird and has got my imagination fired up. And what has the little girl got? She's got scissors behind her back. Okay, and there's something on the teacher's chair. If you could figure out what is going on in this thing, share your theories with me. I want to know. And at this point, the boys are calling me over to look for something, and I have told them to hang on for a second because how are they not looking at this? If you'll remember a few months back, we went and found a lamp that was a little bit like this guy and went back to try to pick it up, and it was gone, and it's been in my thoughts ever since. The axe is removable. This thing from the tip of the axe to the floor is 5 feet tall. It's not a lamp. It could be a lamp. Not that any of us need a lamp, and thank God for the $100 price tag because that meant that I didn't even have to be too tempted by it. And this is what the boys wanted me to look at because I still owe both of them fantastic old trunks because I bought their older siblings fantastic old trunks. I don't know what someone did to this. I saw the price tag and didn't even really look close enough to see if it really was old or if it's just a decorator piece. It's either new or someone messed it up. Next stop was Goodwill, where they had 7 ugly wicker cornucopias. Guys, I do not understand the appeal of these one bit. And another ceramic one, which brings our total to 8. Could not figure out if this thing was an Avon bottle or not. Does that frosted glass automatically indicate that it's an Avon bottle when you pair it with the plastic lid? I went home and looked and confirmed my theory, and it is. And at this point, there was an old guy picking on my youngest son. If there was not music in the video that would get me in trouble with YouTube, I would have left it. Because he came up behind me and asked, "Is this your kid?" And then followed that with, "Well, he owes me $5. And he was just an old guy trying to be silly, except he was not prepared for the look of absolute shock and terror in my son's eyes. Served him right. And I wish I had the audio of that. Look at this bottle. Kaylin, are you seeing this bottle? And since you like the cobalt glass, is that as cool as I think it is? I don't even collect glass, and I kind of want that. So I was looking at this clock thinking that I want a round frame for those cross-stitch hedgehogs, and maybe my answer is to find a clock that's the right measurement and take it apart. That one was cheap plastic, so Doesn't matter if the measurement's right. Take a look at these ladies. And then the verse below it is, our faces were unrecognizable, cherry red gums, cavernous wrinkles trailing from our eyes, overworked nostrils stuck in a permanent flare. We had finally laughed ourselves to death. I'm so intrigued by that. And I don't have any friendships that would apply to, but I can see where that would be appropriate. And took a look at the wicker section. This Goodwill did not have a single cornucopia. Or maybe it's the fact that my son waited in the car and wasn't in there to find them for me, because they're not on my radar to look for. So maybe I walk right past him. And of course, he's got the incentive of aggravating his mother. We were not even in the door of the next store and he had this in his hand, which is why there's no video, because I wasn't even filming yet. This doll is so pretty. I keep telling myself I don't collect dolls, and I keep buying dolls, but I love the lace and her expression and just everything about her. Kind of shocked and very confused that my oldest son does not know about those 1980s ceramic cats, especially because his grandmas all made them. This pilgrim has been here for weeks, and he has been... The first time I saw him, I had to pick him up and check for my mom's signature on the bottom, because he looks so much like the one that she painted back in the 80s, maybe late 70s. And there's supposed to be a flared out end on the muzzle of his rifle, but it broke off when he was still greenware. The only way that she and I can tell that that one is not hers is it doesn't look like the eyes that she paints. And I know everyone back then was painting them from the picture on the ceramic catalog, so they probably were all the same color scheme. Look at this little resin house box. I passed it up because it was full of playing cards, and as I play this back and figure out how to edit it into audio, I bet you could make a sewing kit in that. No cornucopias at this shop, but beyond the gorgeous flowered one at the door. I can actually appreciate that one, but there was a shopping reel. I actually did look up cornucopias to see if there was supposed to be something important about them that I was supposed to be treating with more respect. And it turns out they do have an amazing history in Greek mythology. So I will link to that because they are more interesting than I thought. Out of 4 stores, we found a total of 11 cornucopias, which does confirm my theory that these things are everywhere. And except for 2 of them, I don't want one. If I could find one that was made out of an actual ram's horn or a resin version of a ram's horn, maybe, but not these wicker things. Thanks for coming along and counting cornucopias with us. I'm Michelle from Michelle's Romantic Tangle, and we'll be back with you again very soon. Probably not looking for cornucopias, but like I said, they are everywhere, and they seem to turn up in every thrift store video. I just usually edit them out.